what I really like about what you're describing there is really the recognition that instead of putting all this pressure on, and I think we tend to do that at times. I catch myself being really bad for that, especially as the younger version of me. If I couldn't do it perfect, then I didn't want to do it, or I'd be
Hmm.
extremely critical about the outcome or the result that I had produced on something. And so when I heard you telling your story, I was thinking of that, and how many times do we do that in other aspects of our lives where we have this big, big, hairy, audacious goal on something that puts so much pressure on that really that's is it ultimately that might be where you want to be. Yeah, you're looking for a life partner and have family and all that. But does it have to be at the first date? If we start a business, is it going to make $1 million the next day? Probably not. Are we understanding the position we're putting ourselves in? And when we set ourselves up for failure that way, it's understandable why we tend to want to quit the things that we're become passionate about because we have the wrong paradigm. And so that's really the takeaway that I'm getting from that and from your story is that when we think about in other aspects of our life, it's that pressure and how we framed it, right? And as you were talking about earlier about the working with clients and having them, they don't see that what's going on, and that really leading me into my next question. I was just thinking about that because our lives are all shaped by our history, right? And then we put meaning and stories around that.